Welcome to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Join the podcast mogul Phil Better as he interviews successful entrepreneurs that make their living in the digital world. Now, let's join your host, Phil Better, and his special guest today on Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast.
Hey there, digital entrepreneurs and visionaries. Welcome back to another enlightening episode of Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast, where we uncover the strategies and insights to propel your business to new heights. I am your host, Phil Better, the podcast mogul, and today we have a guest who's redefining the game when it comes to client attraction. Picture this, a seasoned entrepreneur who knows firsthand the challenge of captivating the perfect audience, engaging with them, and fostering genuine connection. With a wealth of experience spanning over 2 decades, our guest has mastered the art and science of client attraction like no other. But what sets them apart? Their ingenious blend of market research techniques and quiz funnel strategies, creating a powerful formula for list building success. With over 25 years of crafting market research and consumer insight for global giants like Apple, when Steve Jobs was there, so you know it was good, Adobe, and Pepsi, our guest brings unparalleled expertise to the table. And here's the kicker. Whether it's a Fortune 100 or a budding startup, the principles of client acquisition remain the same. It's all about finding the right client and nurturing those relationships for long-term gain. So buckle up, entrepreneurs, because today you're about to unlock the secrets to irresistible client attraction with none other than the quiz queen herself, Catharine O'Leary. Catharine, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me, Phil. I'm excited to be here and to chat all things client attraction.
Oh, I'm so excited. So before we jump into everything, I want to know, why did you leave the corporate world for the crazy, unpredictable world of entrepreneurship?
So it's a good question. And when I was my last corporate gig was with Pepsi, and they went through a global reorg, which happens, and my position was made redundant. So I took some time, I hadn't stopped working since I was about, from 16 to then, and tried to figure out what I really, like I was just going from job to job, and wanted to take some time to figure out, was I doing what I wanted to? Was I actually, like, successful? Like I checked all the boxes, making six figures, working with, amazing corporations and so on. And I came up with some hard truths that, like I was checking boxes, but I wasn't really all that happy. And so I kind of, and at the time, and I think because of this conversation I was having with myself, I spent about 8 months trying to find another corporate job, and I just I wasn't getting through to the finish line, and I think it was because I was maybe self-sabotaging a little bit, didn't really want to go back to corporate. Um, Going back to corporate meant for me, from where I live, 3 hours a day in the car commuting. So I kind of got a taste of the sweet life of not commuting while I was looking for work, and then I decided never to go back. So I just decided that I didn't want to be on somebody else's schedule, to be honest.
I love that. I love that. Making your own schedule, making your own path.
Mhm.
And I like how you said you had hit all the boxes of success. And I love that because it is the societal success that we grew up around the same period of time, where it was like, go find a big company, get a good job there, stay the 25 years, and then, retire like our parents and grandparents did. But unfortunately, this modern society doesn't really allow us to have that, because corporations are more pictured their bottom line
Mhm.
versus their employees' life. Um, so you worked for, like, before we started, you told me that you worked for Apple when Steve Jobs was there, which is
Mhm.
insane. I'm guessing you may or may not have had some interactions with Mr. Job himself, a very
I
special one.
brushed by,
You brushed
like
by.
I kinda, yeah. So it was an interesting conversation. He I would classify him as a total genius, total visionary, but to the point where he had a really hard time articulating what he was thinking, because he lived literally 10 years ahead, if not 20 years ahead. Like he saw into the future. And he was already there. So the products that he was talking about, the technology that he was talking about, like he knew it was already created, but we were way back here. We were way back in like present day. So it was hard to really understand where he was going with a lot of stuff because I mean he had the iPad and the iPhone created in his mind. iTunes was secondary back in the day, and the only reason why he did that first was so he could create an ecosystem of digital content for the phone and the iPad tablet. Um, so like just like he created things, you know, first and then it kind of backfilled. But
Oh.
the backfill that we saw first. So it was an interesting time, but yeah, people lived a little bit in fear of going down to the sixth floor and be like with the engineers and so on. I was on another floor, like if I was there presenting research, so I was usually safe. So
You were in, you dropped off, or you bodied off. You're like, this
I
is,
was like, here are the results. You take it to Steve.
yeah.
I'm gone. I'm out. Like,
Steve doesn't need to know I'm alive. He
yeah,
just needs to
no,
see my name. That's it.
Steve doesn't need to say my name. I'm good. I'm good with that.
But it must have not only being like obviously because Steve Jobs is probably now is hit into a legendary status
Oh yeah.
with
Mhm.
what he's done, and not just for his visionary, but building businesses and that.
Mhm.
Um, it must have been inspiring as well because you're working with someone who, like you said, is living 10 years, 20 years into the future. Did you feel that the atmosphere in Apple at the time was one of more creative endeavors to try and build Steve's future?
So it depended on what department you were in,
Okay.
and it depended on how far in advance his vision was to what was actually available. And I'll give you an example. Do you remember the iPod Nano?
Hmm.
The one of the smallest iPods that were out there. It was the first one that had video on it. Um and you know he had a very clear vision about how big it would be, how thin it would be, how like that the video would work, the video would be most of the screen. And the specs were pretty, you know, difficult to get down to that small level. And the chip, the microchips of the day were very small. So they built a working prototype. The team built a working prototype of the Nano, and they were psyched, right? It was $1 million prototype. Like they spent like this thing was working. The video was being captured. You know the
Oh,
music was playing on it. And they were presenting. The team was presenting it, and I'm just hearing it. I'm not in the room. Just to be clear, thank God, I'm not in the room. But um the team was presenting it to Mr. Jobs, and this is why you don't have fish tanks in your boardrooms. But he took one look at it, like they didn't get through the presentation, they didn't get to show the functionality. He took the working prototype, the $1 million working prototype, and threw it into the fish tank. And as everyone watched in horror, from what I hear, this thing just sink to the bottom of the tank. That's not what he was focused on. He was focused on the bubbles that were coming out of the Nano as it sank. And he turned around and he said, if there's air in there, you can make it smaller.
oh,
And he walked out.
wow.
They had to actually create smaller chips, and they had to build a supply chain in order to create the microchips that were small enough to get to the vision that he had. And that's what they did. That's what the Nano ended up being.
That's
So
insane.
it was a little, you know, like it's a little like, oh my God, like this is like the best that we can possibly do with the technology that we have. And if it's still not good enough, that's a little disheartening. Like that's a little hard to take. But you know, that pushed them to build something better. I don't know if I want to live in that atmosphere 24/7.
No, I think I'd burn out much quicker than I did in my business life if I had the Steve Jobs pressure. But it's interesting that being in that environment where someone is so seeing the future, it must have, like, yes, terrifying because you have this, like, god, if you will, of
Yeah.
innovation walking around. But at the same time, did you feel like inspired because he had such a very solid vision of where he wanted the company to go and what he wanted to produce?
You wanna say yes, but you're kind of at the point where you're a little, like, frightened for your life a lot of the times. In hindsight,
Yes.
absolutely, like, totally inspiring, but, like, in the moment, it's really hard to see,
Hmm.
that far ahead. So, like, he is the quintessential entrepreneur in the sense that he's actually living ahead of the curve, and it's hard to keep up to that.
Yeah.
Now this is when I was working for corporate, right? Or I was in the corporate world. He did a lot better with true entrepreneurs, right? Like, he did a lot, like, because people, like, in the entrepreneurial world, when you are an entrepreneur, when you put yourself into that situation where you have to, put yourself 5 years ahead or 10 years ahead in order to figure out what you need to create today, he had an easier time dealing with people like that because they could actually kind of, you know, shake off the reality of present day, um, and play a little bit and dream a little bit. And corporate beats that out of you sometimes.
Yes, yes, I can confirm that 100%. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have burnt out in 2020. But anyways, this is not about me, this is about you. So, Catherine, you jumped out of what we could call the frying pan and landed in the fire of BlackBerry, a widely known,
Oh, true fire. Yes.
a Canadian fire, if we will, one of the biggest Canadian wildfires in business, if you can. You decided to you jump from Apple and the visionary that is Steve Jobs, to, in essence, a house of cards that is slowly, probably, I'm not sure when it was going up in flames, but did go up in flames while you were there at least.
It
What
did.
was the
It
difference like?
did.
Because I want to see, because you're working with Apple and Steve Jobs, and this is a visionary company, and we'll jump into the quizzes and what you do now.
Mhm.
But going into the firehouse that is BlackBerry, what was it like in that time? Because we've heard about how amazing BlackBerry was, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, when you joined, when was the fire started? Did it already start, or was it you were there
It
before the
was
fire?
simmering pretty good. So this
Yeah.
was just as the iPod had come out. And I'd had a couple of jobs in between Apple and BlackBerry, but when I landed at BlackBerry, I mean BlackBerry, like let's face it, they were visionary.
Mhm.
Absolutely. They created the smartphone industry. They created the market. And they had a great ride. Now, and it's funny because people believe that the demise of BlackBerry is because of Apple, and it's not. It has nothing to do with Apple. There was a little bit of a Twitter war or something between Steve Jobs and Jim Basile, that was taking a lot of attention away from what was really going on. And so when I started there, the iPod had just come out. The iPhone was definitely an issue, and a
Mhm.
problem, but the thing was is that people had 2 phones at the time, right? They had an Apple iPhone to play with, and they had the BlackBerry for work, right? And if the world just stayed Apple and BlackBerry would have been fine,
Mhm.
right? Because you would have used your BlackBerry, maybe not fine, but they would, like, it would have lasted a lot longer. What happened was that Google introduced Android, which the Google operating system was given to these massive electronics superpowers like Samsung and LG and HTC, who can produce hardware for pennies on the dollar, right? They never wanted to be computer software people. They never wanted to create an operating system. Android was given to them, and they were basically told, "Look, if you create a hardware, we'll, like, the The
The
software won't
software is
work.
done.
The software is done and it's free. And you can use it you can use it in your phones, right? And it's white labeled basically.
Yeah.
Um that's where you went from 2 phones to, 6 months later, 150 handsets hit the market, right? So you go from 1 BlackBerry new release and 1 Apple new release, and you could set your watch by when those came out,
Hmm.
to within 6 months, Samsung had 4 phones, Nokia had 10 phones, not Nokia because they had their own operating system, but, like, HTC came out, like, every LG, like, every,
Company.
major player in the electronics business became smartphone producers, right? And Google got the eyeballs. That's what they wanted. They
Hmm.
were they were just trying to get more screen time. And they got it by giving the operating system to the people that could create the screens.
And it's very smart
So
because they're getting all
that's
the
what
data
happened.
too,
Exactly.
which is huge.
Exactly. So, a little blindsided by Android, even though some of us in the company were running around like with our hair on fire saying we've got an issue. We've got a problem here. Um, and there's a little bit of, just not, thinking that you were untouchable.
Mm.
And Steve Jobs had done the same thing with Mac, thinking that he was untouchable. So there's a little bit of that when you're a visionary that you kind of don't see sometimes that you're kind of falling behind. Like there's other forces in play. So
Other
it was
visionaries who can see the
it was a
future.
little bit of a tragedy, a Canadian tragedy,
It is. It is a Canadian tragedy, somewhat like the Averill Arrow. But
a little bit,
anyways,
both at the
so
bottom of Lake Ontario. But
yes, they both are. Um, so from there, you went into Pepsi, and you did amazing things with Pepsi. I don't really want to touch on Pepsi because Pepsi's just a regular company. You just help them build their brand.
regular company, Super Bowl ads, things
Yeah,
like that.
just
Yeah,
like
regular.
they didn't really innovate the world recently, like Steve and BlackBerry. So we'll just leave them. They're a major, big stepping stone in your career, of course, and
Yeah,
you did a
and a
great
great
step.
great company to work with. Great company to work with.
Of course, because they've been around so long, they're established. They know exactly how to keep their people happy.
They
Um,
do.
when you finally did decide to step off into your own, um, how long did it take you to figure out? Because I know a lot of entrepreneurs, when we do step into, we go from corporate to our own business, our own livelihood. When we take control of it, we can be overwhelmed because there's so many choices
Mhm.
and options and paths and stuff to go down to. What was it like for you to establish yourself as the quiz queen? Like, when did you do this? Like, when did that pop up? How did it like evolve into where we are today?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. It did not start that way. So I did not leave corporate and start, immediately into helping small businesses with their client attraction. I didn't know how to like I wasn't sure how to make that skill set, like that skill set, that market research and insight skill set felt very corporate.
Mhm.
And I did not want to become a market research supplier to corporate. That I didn't want any part of that. So I didn't know how to translate that skill set into a business on my own. So I actually started with network marketing and direct sales. And it was a personal development company. They had great products, they had great events, it was a great community. And it took me about a year to figure out how bad I was at lead generation. In fact, I sucked at it. Like it was bad. I was spending all the money on all the wrong things. I was, spending way too much time on sales calls that went nowhere. I was talking to unqualified person after unqualified person because of the way that I was messaging and the way that I was, you know, um, putting myself out there. So I had to figure out how to ditch lead generation, because I was creating leads. That wasn't
Mhm.
the problem. The problem was they weren't qualified for what I was, trying to sell and offer. So I had to ditch lead generation, figure out how to attract clients. And I found a mentor that I started working with, Mark Lack, and he introduced me to somebody that was doing quiz funnels. And when I kind of found that, the bells and whistles went off, and I was like, oh, that's how that can happen. Okay. So I tested the theory on my own business, and I tripled my leads and I doubled my sales. I tried it with a few colleagues of mine, just as make sure it wasn't a one-time deal. They got similar results, and I kind of haven't looked back from there, because I just don't want people to be spending hand over fist and almost going broke on paid ads that don't go anywhere, sales calls that suck the life out of you, and social media that goes into the ether, never to be seen again. So I wanted to kind of work with coaches and consultants and entrepreneurs to make sure that small businesses succeed, and you don't waste a whole lot of time and money before you even get started, really.
I love that. I love that. With that, like with all the insights that you've gained over corporate, um, have you seen a lot of similarities? Because obviously business is
Mhm.
business, but corporate does it on a different level in essence. Was it when you finally it did kind of click on how to get the right clients and people to see your products? Did you see like, was it an easier fix? Like, because you knew how to talk to corporate, right? Like you
Mhm.
said, and you didn't want to work with corporate. Like when it finally did click, and you're like, oh, this is how it does. Were you like, oh, all my skills are perfectly transferable?
They were, and it was easier in the sense that, so first of all, entrepreneurs, small businesses don't necessarily listen to their clients very closely. So it's a massive gap to begin with. Like, let's just start listening to the information that people are giving us, and actually, pivot and make changes to our services or our messaging or whatever needs to happen. So corporate does that really well. Corporate does, pull in that information. They don't share it back very well, but they do pull that information in and make changes to their, or development, innovation, ideation, that kind of thing. That's an easy thing for small businesses to incorporate quickly. Is not an easy thing for corporate to incorporate quickly, because you've got a whole bunch of shareholder or stakeholders and divisions and procurement and hierarchy, and it's exhausting. So it's actually easier for small and medium businesses to actually incorporate, this into their strategic plans, and make some big differences in the way that they are able to reach their ideal clients. So yes, transferable, and even easier to talk to the ultimate decision maker, and make big impacts it really quickly, on a business. Like, to make an impact on Pepsi, like a 1% impact on Pepsi, it's like millions of dollars,
Yeah.
right? To make 1 or 2% impact on a small business can be the different, like, that could double their revenue goals. So that's brilliant.
Yeah.
I love that.
I love that. I love how you're taking like your expertise and like you said, like working for a major corporation like Pepsi, Apple, even BlackBerry at the time, making a simple percent change would have to like be monumental, whereas making a simple percent change can change it from being like a $5,000 month to a $10,000 month, and they're sitting pretty because they
And that's
it's less
game
work.
changing.
Oh,
That
yeah,
can be
it's
game changing.
yeah.
100%. Like, that's game changing stuff. Like, that's cool.
Yeah, and you get to be on the footnote. Like personally, for me, I love helping people. Like that's my goal is just to help people get out there. And one of the ways I do this is like people who may not know who the quiz queen is. Now they listen to this podcast. They're like, oh my god, I need the quiz queen in my life. Like I'm helping being a small sub footnote in your story as well as my audience story. That's all I want to do. I want to help people become the best version of themselves, and
Mhm.
by doing that, it's helping them grow their businesses. And I love that you're doing that in impacting small businesses. because they are the backbone of our economy. If we don't have small businesses, big business isn't going to be taking care of us.
Well, and I think, well, I don't think, I know. So we talked, about, when our fathers and grandfathers, like, they'd stay with, one corporation or one, business, and, for 25 years. That wasn't happening even 10, 20 years ago, right? You're flipping through 6 or 7 corporations, right? Now, I think, like, like, you can't rely on corporate,
No.
right? At all. Like, I think entrepreneurship is actually going to be the norm, coming out of the pandemic. I think that it's more flexible. It's easier to pivot, small businesses. So I think small businesses are going to start to rule the world in a way that they should. And um, and I think that we need to get better at helping those businesses succeed, so that, like that obnoxious number of, I don't know, 87% or something fail within the first 5 years. Like, that's got to change. Like,
Mhm.
we got to get better at helping people who want to make a difference and who want to make an impact and who want to, create those valuable jobs and those valuable ideas, because innovation and ideation is only going to get better the less hierarchy and the less structure, really, that you have, and that's going to be a small and medium business play.
What I love what you just said about the movement that small businesses have versus corporations. It reminds me of Richard Branson, because he owns Virgin. He did go public with Virgin, and he hated it. I remember reading his book, I think like a Virgin or something along those lines, where he literally bought back the company from his board of directors because they weren't moving it so fast. And
Hmm.
it just reiterates what you said, like small and medium businesses can move at a drop of a hat, whereas a corporation, it's like the Titanic. It takes, oh, you have an idea, it has to get approved by your boss, then it has to go up again, then it has to go to legal, then marketing, and then all the way up to the CEO, and then he has to give his changes and the board and all that, and it can take years for things to go. Whereas
Well, and if things are changing rapidly, around you, and um, you're not seeing it, you're not making those changes, you end up like BlackBerry
yeah, at the bottom of Lake Ontario.
at the
Uh,
bottom of Lake Ontario. They're not really at the bottom of Lake Ontario. It's just Waterloo. It's fine.
yeah, so they're good. They're good.
Yeah,
I
they're good.
do.
They're still around.
I I want to ask you this, Catherine. Your extensive expertise in crafting market research and consumer insight for Fortune 500 companies, as well as for small businesses, you undoubtedly honed a deep understanding of what truly resonates with consumers. Can you share an example of a project where your expertise played a pivotal role in transforming client attraction strategies?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things when you're developing your quiz, because basically that's a conversation with your ideal client,
Mhm.
and it's a conversation where you're helping them better understand and get a little bit of relief from their 3 a.m. question. That question that's causing them to wake up at night. Um, and the thing is that sometimes entrepreneurs think they know the 3 a.m. question and think that they're the expert on that question, but without really going through, and just because you build it doesn't mean that they'll come. So, kind of backwards engineering from the solution to what is the actual problem that I'm solving? What are the stepping stones between that problem and the solution that I have that makes sense for somebody to go, "Oh, of course I need to talk to them about what's going on with my business, or about how I can close that gap or get over that hurdle, or better utilize that superpower, whatever it is." When you sit down and actually go through those steps, there's a lot of clarity that can come from that. So I had one one client, that fought me a little bit on what his quiz should be, and it was all about developing coaches' superpowers. And it wasn't so much about the superpower that the coach had; it was more about the kryptonite that they talked about, and how to help coaches with that kryptonite. And framing it in that kind of a different way than from where he was going brought a lot of clarity, not only on his ideal client, but the audience that he needed to talk to. So the next time that he talked to, a right fit audience, he instead of getting, 10% of people doing the quiz, he got 90% of people doing the quiz that went to a sales call. And that sales call ended up being a lot more about how do I sign up? What program do I sign up for? Not about, what is your program? Like there was no explanation needed. There was just like, let's get into how, like, what do I sign up for? Right? So, it wasn't even a sales call, it was more of an enrollment call, which they should be, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, he kind of got super clear on the where his audience was going to be sitting so that if he went on to a summit or a podcast or was speaking, he knew the audience that, he needed to be targeting better. And like that's most of the game, right? So
Mm.
I would much rather be in a room of 50 people that are ideal clients than in a stadium of 10,000 trying to find the 50 people.
Yeah. I love that. Oh, that's great. Um, we are coming near the end, but I have a few more questions for you
Sure.
before we go. One is obviously about investing in yourself, given the name of the show.
Mhm.
You've dedicated uh, 2 decades mastering the art of client attraction. Self investment is undoubtedly it plays a crucial role in your
Mhm.
ongoing success. How do you prioritize investing in yourself amidst the demands of your professional life? And what practices or habits have you found most effective in fostering that personal and professional growth?
Yeah, so for in corporate you're taught that it's an expense, right? Like any kind of training that you're going on, it's something that's taking you away from the job. It's something that you have to do because HR told you or whatever, right? Totally different game on the entrepreneurial side, right? Every entrepreneur should have a coach, a mentor of some sort. And if you are working with somebody that isn't having their own mentor and coach, like I'd question that. Because this game is all about mindset and it's all about growing into your confidence and your unique abilities, and you're going to need help doing that. So this is an investment. This isn't this isn't a cost like center. This is when you're investing not only in yourself, but as you invest in yourself, you're investing in your business. So it's a business investment that you happen to be, benefiting from on a personal level too. Because the greatest personal development on earth is becoming an entrepreneur, I think.
Mhm. I love that. Great answer. I love it. Oh, I love chatting with amazing entrepreneurs like yourself, Catherine, because you guys give me the best advice and it just clarifies everything. And I know my audience is taking away golden opportunities from this. Um, but my final question, it is the selfish question,
Yeah.
because if you have a podcast, you have to have a selfish question. I think that's one of the rules. But I have your 10-year-old self right here, Catherine. She's a
Yeah.
spitfire. I think she bit me at one point. Just letting you know.
Maybe.
Uh,
Yeah.
is a possibility. Um,
Hospital. Yeah.
what's one piece of advice you would love to be able to give your 10-year-old self?
Wow. It has to do with confidence. So being confident in yourself. There are mean people out there and kids can be mean, right? So like people are going to say mean things, and I think that that's only going to that's just gotten worse with social media and so on, and the ease of people being able to trash other people. So being really confident in yourself and you know like don't listen to people that you don't respect, right? And don't respect people that talk crap about other people. And I think that if just listen to the people that you respect and make sure you're respecting the people that are holding themselves to a higher standard, you'll be able to be surrounded by confident people that will help you, achieve what you want to achieve.
I love that. Another great piece of advice from an awesome entrepreneur. Catherine, I'm going to jump off stage here. I want you to tell my audience where they can connect with you so that they can become friends with the quiz queen herself and then take their business to the next level. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, everyone, if you are interested at all in client attraction and figuring out how to really get, building that deeper relationship with your ideal clients from the start, you can go to quizformybiz.com and take the quiz, and learn a little bit more about how a quiz can help you with your business and close any gaps that you might have with talking about your business to your ideal clients. So quizformybiz.com. Would look forward to seeing you on the other side of that.
I love that. Very simple, straight to the point. Quizformybiz.com. First of all, rolls off the tongue. And I love it. It's genius. Again, you're great at marketing, so obviously that was going to come. I wonder if did you do a quiz to figure out that name?
I didn't do a quiz. I just wanted to make sure it was something that would be like if you're driving, that you'll remember when you get home. If you're, doing the dishes or something, that it kind of, like you said, rolled off the tongue, and wasn't too hard to spell. So because my name as Catherine, it can be
Yes.
spelled 120 different ways. So, using my name in any kind of a URL like that is just it's a recipe for disaster.
You'll
So
have to buy all of them.
I needed to come up with something that would actually work.
There we
And
go.
without me spelling my name 150 times a day, right?
I love it. I think it's genius. It's great. It's art, like it's stuck in my head. Like quiz for my business. It's like I can't forget it now. Even if I tried. So Catherine, I can't thank you
What's the
enough for
point? Yeah.
yeah, it's great.
And I'm sorry for
Marketing.
biting you.
It's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
I forgive you because you gave so much great advice. I think it was just excitement. Catherine, I can't thank you enough for being here and sharing your story with my audience. It was a lovely time chatting with you.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for listening.
To my audience, make sure you check out the notes down below, the show notes down below. They'll have all the links to connect with Catherine. But of course, quizformybiz.com. It's the easiest one in the world. It'll be there. And I thank you again for listening. And remember to always invest in yourself.